All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of BlockChai and Chill. I'm very excited to have you here. Our topic today is about Web3 jobs, and I have with me two wonderful people. First is Kendall Key, who is a web developer at Decentology. She's going to help me a little bit with the moderation. And my special guest for today is Denise Schaefer, a good friend and co-founder of Surge Women. So Denise, why don't you start by introducing yourself a little?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here and love working with Nick and Decentology. He's been a great mentor to us since we started Surge. Surge is a female-led organization focused on educating and onboarding more women to Web3. We focus on creating easily digestible educational content. And our mission from the beginning has been to change the information pipeline around crypto and making it more accessible to women. So we have a Discord where women and non-binary individuals of all levels and all different points on their crypto journey come to learn together. And so it's been really amazing to see that community grow. And I'm really excited to talk today about our new initiative, which is Search Web3 Jobs. And we'll touch base on that a bit later, but that's a place for Web3 organizations to hire women and non-binary talent in our efforts to increase the diversity in crypto. So really excited to be here and really excited to chat with you all.
Great, welcome and thank you. I'm looking forward to that part of our conversation. So as I mentioned at the top, our topic is about Web3 jobs. And what we're going to do in today's session is we're going to talk about Web3 jobs in general. Then we're going to dive in a little bit and focus more on women in crypto and jobs for that. And that's where Denise will shed some light on her organization and about her learnings in general. And then we'll take it over to DAOs, like the future of jobs, in DAOs and essentially the gig economy, but on crypto. And of course, we are going to take your questions. Today, we are going to keep an eye on the questions. And what we're going to do is for the best question that we take and answer, there is a wonderful prize. There's a Fame Lady NFT that is going to be awarded to the winner. So save your questions, and a little later, we'll ask you to post them to the chat, and then we'll take those on. So I think a good place to start is to make sure that everyone understands what are the opportunities or jobs that are available in Web3 or crypto. I'm going to use Web3 and crypto interchangeably here, whichever resonates for that particular sentence. So if you are looking to get into Web3 and you want to make that sort of your career, you got to think about how you approach it. And at a very, very high level, you can think of it as almost like I would say a 6-part kind of journey. The first thing is you have to, as an individual, become slightly comfortable with crypto in general. So you need to understand the basics of using a wallet and things like that. And it's always good to hang out in one of the many communities that exist where you can learn about, and Surge being one of them, you can learn a lot about. So for that first part, if you take that step and you get more comfortable with it, then it positions you really, really well for the remaining 5 steps. So Denise, why don't we start right there and say, like, if someone wanted to get started in crypto, what does Surge offer them? Oh, yeah, Kendall, you have to unmute her.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, sorry, 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. So we think starting with the basics is really important, which is how we've tailored and curated our content around. I think the first question you got to understand is how a blockchain works, and then start, I think, interacting with the blockchain. You actually end up learning a lot more. Like, for sure, you should read all of the articles on what is Ethereum, what is a blockchain, what is Bitcoin. And then from that point, though, downloading a MetaMask wallet, for example, we have a how to MetaMask guide, and it's actually our most popular, our most read article. And for us, that's really exciting because it means that people are actually following this and starting to interact with the blockchain. Buying an NFT, you can learn so much. But I think there's also, like you said, Nick, there's so much possibilities of what you can do in blockchain. And I think there's a big misconception that you have to be technical in order to work in blockchain, when that's not actually the case. You should for sure know the basics, and you should understand how blockchain technology works. And then from that point, you can choose, is your area, do you want NFTs to become your area of expertise? Do you want to dive deep into DeFi? Are you more interested in joining a DAO? So I would say buying an NFT, joining a DAO after you understand the basics is a great step two, and just dive in.
Yeah, great response. And actually you touched upon step two, is once you get familiar with the basics of crypto, whether you do it individually or as part of a community, the next step is you need to essentially decide where you want to go. And what you need to do is kind of figure out what communities appeal to you. And the nice part about Web3 is you don't have to limit yourself to one. You don't have to say like, this is the only community. In fact, most of us are active members in multiple communities. And what you need to do is become familiar with these communities. And as you become familiar with them, you get a sense of, first of all, what the vibe is of each community. They're all different depending on what they're doing. You get familiar with that. And now what you need to do is you need to start engaging in that community. And this is the pathway to any kind of career or job in crypto, is you need to build up your reputation. And the only way you can build up your reputation is by engaging in these communities. You can't just be sort of like a Me Too comment person where like, every time someone says something, you echo it or whatever. You got to actually engage in discourse and really make yourself known in the community. So that would be like the second step, and that's about building reputation. So Denise, in your community, you've got a thriving community. Like, are there people that like just stand out there as like stellar, like, and
yeah, I think you touched on a really good point, that learning with other people and learning in community is a lot easier and a less lonely road than learning by yourself, right? So anything that you're learning, if you have either friends in real life that you're interested in learning together, or the beauty about Web3, making friends online, which is, I mean, at least for me, that's new. I know people have been making friends online for a long time, but ever since I stepped into Web3, that's really been a theme in my life. Friends that I care about that I haven't met yet in real life. But I think finding your community, like Nick said, is really important. And that's why Juliet and I set out to become to create Surge, is due to the fact that we had gone down the crypto rabbit hole, and we felt that most of these discords and most of these communities were very male dominated and crypto bros. And that doesn't mean that we weren't learning, but we weren't finding like-minded individuals or just other women to learn with. And so I think a big theme in the Surge community is that women helping women, and like women empowering women. And there are a lot of people that I can think of, to answer your question, that have been amazing. And I think what's awesome is that we have people of all levels in there. We also welcome men as allies who care about our mission. Nick, for example, is an ally to us. And the awesome thing is that we have people who come in and have never had a MetaMask wallet, and then we have somebody that's running a DeFi protocol, right? And so having those different levels of experiences and people really helping each other is amazing to see. Like, we have an Ask Questions channel, and somebody will go and ask a question, and 90% of the time somebody will come and answer, right? So I think that's finding community and finding like-minded individuals, and making sure to also talk about other things. You don't want to just burn out and all you talk about is crypto. So like now we're doing like IRL events and some fun stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, essentially, like working through the trajectory so far, you learn some basics, whether you do that solo or as part of a community, depending on your learning style. You engage with the community. now you're starting to build reputation. People are starting to know who you are. You're making friends, and people like you're maybe even during COVID, it became normal for people to sort of have a Zoom and just be social,
Yeah.
because you can't go anywhere, right? So you're doing that. So now, the trajectory is about eventually getting some income. So you have to move on to the next step there. And the easiest way to do that is to start looking for bounties that fit your area of expertise or your passion. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, the concept of a bounty may not be familiar to everybody, but the idea is that typically a DAO, or it doesn't have to be a DAO, an organization might say that we need X done, and we are willing to pay Y for it, and here's the terms. You have to do it within this time frame. Here's what the review will be, etc. And if you choose to accept it, then you may have to go through some qualification process, because you can't just accept any kind of thing, and so that will vary. But once you do that task, you complete it, and then you get paid. So this is not that different from what you might consider a freelance gig, in real life, in Web2, etc. But I think the difference is that most of it is done without any geographic preference or any kind of localized focus. It's not about what organization you are with. It may not even be about your reputation. Your resume. It's about your reputation within the community. If you earn that reputation, getting a bounty and being awarded that bounty is much easier than if you just come in cold and say, hey, I want this. So Denise, let's touch upon that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's, we're not a DAO. And so we've talked through some bounty structures that we want to set in place. But the one bounty, the two types of bounties that we're technically doing now is we produce content, right? And so our bounties right now are more so article based. So our projects, for example, at Search, if you're a writer or a technical writer, and either a technical writer or an amazing writer who knows the Web3 basics, then we hire people on a per project basis, and you go through our process. And a lot of DAOs do similar stuff where they'll tell you like their tone, and we say like, this is what we want out of our article. And if it makes sense, and if the person gets our tone right, then we start working with them on a bounty basis. So I think that's an amazing thing of DAOs. And I've seen a lot of projects pop up where you can just go and you can even get paid to create memes. You can get paid to run social media, to tweet for people. There's so many jobs out there in Web3 that are contractor based. So I would highly recommend that. And that's another area that you learn by interacting, right? And you learn by doing, as we spoke at the beginning. So that's one way to join a DAO and gain tokens. A lot of the times, you need tokens to vote in DAOs, and the more bounties that you complete for a DAO, the more tokens you have, and the bigger part in a DAO that you have.
Yeah, that's an excellent point you touched on there. Like traditionally, people always think about doing work and getting paid with fiat currency, but that's the beauty of Web3, is that now you get paid in potentially tokens that have value unto themselves, but they also impart rights to you and give you the ability to start governing the very community you're part of. Having these tokens, earning these tokens gives you voting rights, and then you can start impacting where that community goes. And here's the beauty of it. If your bandwidth allows, you can do multiple of these gigs in parallel. Obviously, you're the best arbiter of how much your workload is, etc. But the most of the people posting bounties, they are not about to check on you and say, are you working 8 to 5 or whatever? They're looking for results. And I love that aspect of it, because I believe that most jobs should be about results and not about showing up to work at a certain time and filling your chair, things like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So all right. So you've done a few bounties now. By the way, Gitcoin is also a great place to check out bounties, but there's lots of places where you can find them. So you've done a few bounties within a specific community, and you're building your reputation. So the next step might be if that is a DAO, or again, it doesn't have to be a DAO, it can be an organization like Surge, you may now qualify or be invited to be sort of employed in a part-time role, where now it's not just about getting, a bounty oriented job, but you now have a fixed role and you're expected to continue with that role on a regular basis. So most organizations, because of where they're mostly fledgling and they don't have a lot of capital unless they've done a big drop. That's basically where you're going to start, with a part-time gig. Is that right for Surge?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because that at first Surge started with a shared concept and a shared idea that Juliet and I had, and some other people that we had met during a fellowship that I'd love to talk about fellowships and how important those could be in this as well. And we just started all working together and said, let's let the team naturally sift to the top and let's work and see what happens here. And so a lot of the people that we've now hired on a part-time basis and now starting to on a full-time basis have been contributors that were just contributing their time at first. And we ended up working well together, and they really got the tone and they helped Surge become what it is today, and we kept them on. So that's definitely a scenario that's playing out, especially across DAOs where bounties are almost the first step towards proving yourself to the community. And it really shows whether you're a good fit, whether the community is a good fit for you. So I think it's an awesome place to start. And that's how we've done things at Surge, actually. For example, our content lead started as just writing one article, right? And then now, fast forward 3 months, she's content lead and interviewing a bunch of writers for us. So it's been really awesome to see that progression.
Yeah, that's cool. So obviously, you build competency through bounties, then you get part-time, and obviously then comes the main thing, is you might start working full-time. Because now you've sort of reached a trusted echelon within an organization, and
Right.
you might become part of a team. So how is that structured at Surge?
How the team is structured. So we currently have 2 founders, Juliet and myself, and then we have 5 leads working on the core team. We have, like I mentioned, a content lead, we have a partnership lead, we have an operations lead that we just hired. And so the 5 of us work really closely together. And then outside of that, anybody else that we work with works on a contractor per project basis, right? So we have a graphic designer who has done a couple of things for us. And then we have our writers who will get paid every article that they write. And that's the way we're structuring things now. We're growing, we're getting ready to do an NFT project. So these things are really changing as we evolve, but that's our current structure. And it started from just contributors 3 months ago. So that gives you.
Cool. So, so as you were talking about this, I was listening to the types of roles there are. And this is, let's dive into that a little bit right now. I want to kind of talk about the fact that most people think that you got to be an engineer, right? But we've already talked about other roles. And I kind of made a list here, and let's just go down a few of them. So obviously, writers or content creators are big, and it could be anything. It could be writing, making videos, like audio, memes, all of that. There is social media engagement, etc., that you would do for an organization or DAO, etc. You could be an expert at that.
We're currently hiring for one. So yes, continue.
That's great. Then a product manager. If it's a product-centric organization and you want to build things, your product management skills in Web2 are completely transferable and available in this domain. And that can be as simple as working on, a simpler product, or it might be a more complex product, which might have multiple product roles within it. Obviously, then let's get into the design aspects of it. There's roles for graphic designers, UX designers. There's also UI designers and even mobile designers, etc. A couple of other roles which you might not think of. But DAOs, like other businesses or even organizations, need to grow. They need to have partnerships. So that might be biz dev. So you might work on that. You might also be like a grants coordinator, where you use your skills working on grants to apply for various grants to help fund the organization. A couple of other ones I can think of are project managers. There's always projects, you need to organize them. And then I think a really key role in all these communities is a community manager. That's like really, really important role. Do you have community managers, and what do they do?
Sort of. So I wear a lot of hats, and so does Juliet. So I act as a community manager. We do have we do have a community manager, but she is on a part-time basis. And that was working for us when we were first growing, and now we're scaling at a faster pace. So we're actively hiring. We just think this is a very, very important role that we're not ready to hand off to somebody unless we meet the perfect match. So we're in the interviewing, but like Nick mentioned, that's a really key role in the organization. And we currently I would say we currently have 3 part-time community managers, but we really need to fill that in as we grow with a full-time dedicated community manager. And some communities have more than one, right? Like you'll join certain Discords that have 12, 15
Yeah.
moderators. So it really depends how fast you're scaling and where you're at as an org.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that community manager is a super key, a super important role. And one of the things that I think smart organizations do is that make sure that the community manager comes from inside. Like you have to have become familiar with the community. You can't just drop yourself into a community and say, I'm going to be a community manager.
Yeah.
Now, because really, that term manager is completely misleading. It's really liaison. It's a champion. It's getting people to have a sense of synergy with the organization's goals, and really just energy, like making sure that people are excited and on board. So so as you can see, like there's a lot of different ways in which you can participate, and it's not just about having gigs. You can transition from a gig role to a part-time to a full-time role. So so speaking of that, full-time roles, let's talk about like jobs in crypto, and let's talk about your job board that you've created. Share some details about it.
And just to finish off on that point, I think this concept that you have to be technical to work in crypto couldn't be further from the truth if we want Web3 to go mainstream, right? Meaning we need marketers, we need a lot of the roles that Nick touched base on. And one thing that I would advise people to look into, there are some initiatives out there. For example, we recently did a partnership with Hype Partners where we extended our community I think 5 scholarships. And what they do is they created a cohort for anybody who wants to make the transition from Web2 marketing to Web3 marketing, right? And even if you don't have marketing experience, you can take this cohort, and then by the end of it, you will have the tools to work in marketing in Web3. So if you look for these opportunities, they are out there. And a lot of these projects are actually free. So I recommend that. And then I also recommend fellowships, like we talked about. Juliet and I actually met during Kernel Fellowship, and that's a place to meet like-minded individuals and start working in crypto, or maybe a lot of the people on there are already working in crypto. So I'd really recommend that for educating yourself. There's initiatives out there. You just got to look for them.
So Denise, before we go into the job board, let's parse out the fellowship concept a little bit more. For people who are unfamiliar with it, what exactly is that? How does it work? So Kernel would actually be the only crypto fellowship I've done. So I'll speak from that experience. Kernel has semesters called blocks, right? And so I was a part of Kernel Block 4, KB4, and they have an application. You fill in your application, you say why you want to work in crypto, what you're currently doing, and they admit around 200 people. I think they may have upped that number now to 300. So it's between 200 to 300 people per block. And
you have speakers come in, like for example, our first speaker there was Vitalik, which was awesome. And every week you have fireside chats and really amazing people doing really awesome things in Web3 to learn from. And then within it, you can take specific classes, right? So there was a class that you could take to how to understand smart contracts, how to read smart contracts. And then there's all types of levels. So for somebody that's more technical and high level, like uh, uh, taking your skills from Web2 coding to Web3 coding, NFT classes, and then you have a Slack channel where everybody communicates. So it's just an amazing place to network with people. You can post your ideas, and that's actually on one of the Slack channels. I posted my idea for Surge in one of the women channels and met a bunch of people and started Surge there. So that's what a lot of these fellowships tend to look like. You'll have like optional classes, optional chats you can attend. And to get the most out of it, I recommend attending the chats and signing up for as many of the classes as you can. But that's what that looks like. And
Yeah, you just touched upon something that I see almost daily, multiple times, and this is only true in Web3. I've never seen it in Web2. Is a tweet, a post in a Discord or Slack or something like that, and it grows, and boom, out of that comes a project, a company, a DAO. Like it just happens so fast. It's just mind blowing, and I see it happen all the time. It's just organic growth.
And I think joining any of these type of communities, the more involved you are, like Nick, you said earlier, the more opportunities that you will have by being involved in these discords, right? So for example, we did like the scholarship with this marketing cohort. We just announced another scholarship with another cohort called Crypto Culture and Society, which is quite similar to Kernel. And so the more involved you are in these communities, the more opportunities that you'll find.
Awesome. All right, so let's pivot back to the Surge jobs board. What was the inspiration for that, and where in the life cycle of that are you?
Yeah, so when we started Surge, we actually had not thought we had not, it was not part of the plan. And the plan really and the mission has always been securing women's place in Web3, and by that onboarding more women to Web3. So one of the things as we started to dive deep into this and into the diversity issue, we learned that out of all the leadership positions in crypto, only 5% are held by women. And for one developer from 1 out of 10 developers in Web2 that are women in crypto, that stat is 1 in 50, I believe. And so we really were like, okay, we need to do something to bring more women in. So we created Search Web3 Jobs, which is intended to be a place for all the Web3 organizations to come and hire solely women and non-binary individuals in order to increase the gender diversity within their companies and within their organizations. And we have DAOs on there. We have Coinbase on there. We have MetaMask. We have Forefront. We have some really amazing organizations that have posted their job listings. And then we have the talent collective, and this talent collective is our vetted talent that we approve, and you have to be a woman or a non-binary person to apply and get accepted to it. So we're really excited, and we're trying to bring more women to Web3 organizations.
Yeah, that number you quoted, the stats is just abysmal. I mean, 1 in 5 in leadership role and 1 in 50.
No,
and
5%.
Oh, 5%.
5%
Wow.
leadership role.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
5 in 100.
We gotta fix that, Denise. We gotta really fix that. In a hurry.
We're trying. I'll actually post the job board so you guys can take a look at it. So any organization that wants to sign up, or any talent, any women that are looking to get hired. The awesome thing here is that you can also, as we said, you can apply for full-time jobs, but there are also per project contractor opportunities. So there's some freelance opportunities for women. We're excited about it.
Yeah, I appreciate the work you're doing to help end that. I have another project I work on with a wonderful team of women called Try Crypto, and we are working on the same mission. And it's really it feels really good to see the number of women-led projects that are just springing up. And I almost feel like, yes, the numbers you stated are true today, but I can see the velocity with which some of these projects are coming up.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to move the needle much faster in Web3 than Web2 ever did. So
yeah, and what we try to do at Search is, fix the issue at the beginning, like build this new space with women helping to build it, unlike Web2, where you now see all this retroactive fixing and companies retroactively trying to fix wages and trying to bring more women in. And our take is, let's just build it with women from the beginning so we don't have to make these retroactive fixes later.
Yeah. So, all right. So I want to start transitioning our conversation into like DAOs. But before I do that, I want to do two things. One is I want to open up the chat here for questions from anybody. If you have any questions about careers in Web3 or whatever, please post them in chat. And while we do that, I want to put Kendall on the spot here and talk a little bit about her journey. So Kendall works at Decentology, and she came fresh out of school. So I want to just share with us what just diving into this Web3 stuff out of nowhere what has it been like for you? What are your thoughts, your learnings? What were some likes or dislikes, etc.? Go at it, Kendall.
Okay, yeah. So I actually had this thought earlier today. If you went back in time to this time last year and told me that I would work in Web3, I would look at that person and say, I don't even know what Web3 is. I had never heard of Web3. I think I had heard of the term blockchain, maybe mentioned a couple of times. I had no idea that this kind of a space like even existed. I was working as a software developer. It was my very first internship for a healthcare company. I was really new in that. I was even really new within like even just the Web2 space. I mean, so it's been quite the whirlwind to be like brand new in Web2 and then make the jump to Web3, which I did back in September when I was hired with Decentology. It's been, I mean, to say that my life has changed would be, I don't know, it almost sounds like not even enough. Like, it's just like, I've learned so much about, like how these systems work. And like, even in Web3 as a whole, like all these sub communities that are within it, like with DAOs and all the people that are really into like DeFi, all these companies that are building all this tooling to fast track people. I will say that my favorite is getting to see companies like Surge Women, like these organizations that are like really focused on making sure that people who are underrepresented in, spaces like tech and stuff are like finally getting, platforms to build and to speak. Yeah. And just to like be able to make room in the space. But I think for me, like, it's been like a really good whirlwind. It's just been, I've learned so much about working for a startup, working within Web3, learning about all these really weird Web3 words that you hear every day. I mean, I think when I was hired, I made a Twitter because Nick told me that crypto was really big on Twitter. And so I was like, okay. So I made a Twitter and I just started following a bunch of people. And I felt like it was a whole new language. I felt like I didn't know any of these terms or anything, but it's just been, like when you're just put into the space, like, it's just, I mean, just for me, it's just been a huge learning opportunity. And you sort of just learn without really knowing how to learn, you're just in it now, and that's what it is. And it's really cool, like I get to meet all kinds of really cool people. I get to do really cool things. And I really hope that, a lot of you that are in this space right now, and, if you want to be within Web3, you get to find your space just like I did and get to experience the whirlwind that I did. So, yeah.
That is just simply awesome. And actually, Kendall, you touched on something else unknowingly that I want to talk about a little bit. In a traditional sort of Web2 role or Web2 company, etc., it's really hard for you to shine. It takes time before, you have to go through a certain trajectory, a certain pathway before you can really thrive and flourish, etc. One of the great things about Web3 and these communities is that they're relatively small. They are not like, we're not talking tens of thousands of people. So the opportunity for you to have two things. One, build confidence, because for the most part, a lot of people may have skills, etc., but they lack the ability to speak about it in public, to talk about it, to engage. But these communities, they're almost hives where you're kind of protected a little bit, and you can express yourself, you can be yourself, and you can build that confidence way faster than you ever would have in Web 2. Like Kendall is a great example. She's actually going to be, she's been doing Twitter Spaces, and I'm pretty sure you didn't imagine, like, a year ago that you would be like speaking in public, like even here, or leading workshops at ETH Denver or things like that. That's the stuff that we are going to do. What do you think, Kendall? Like, would you say that you have confidence boost because of these interactions?
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you have to, like you're talking about ETH Denver. I mean, like these are huge events. These are huge, really big spaces where a lot of like really important people and a lot of people that are really passionate about Web3 are going to be, and they're there to see you talk about what you have to say and hear about your company or your tooling, or they're there to learn about blockchain or Web3. I think you just have to be like, you can't, I don't know, you can't get up on a stage like that and just not have to like, you just have to believe in yourself,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what I like is the fact that I see time and time again, people who would otherwise be like shy or not feel confident, just go ahead and start participating, start talking, and I just really like that opportunity, which doesn't exist in Web 2. All right, so I see a couple of questions here. A question is, what languages do you need to be comfortable with before being able to work on Web3 projects? And I was going to answer, and I don't know if this is the intended question, but I was going to say that, well, it's good to know English, but
I was going to say the same.
yeah, but it's not a requirement. I mean, there are other communities, but if you're asking about programming languages, and I can see the conversation is going towards JavaScript, etc., and I get that. Yeah, like even today, like this is a good example. Like when you talk about careers, etc., there's always this assumption that it's about a technical role, and we need to do more of these kind of sessions to help shift minds a little bit, that this is not all about technology. The technology is the underpinning of it, but Web3 is about community and culture, so decentralized technology plus community plus culture. And you can play in any of those buckets. You can play in the technology bucket, you can play in the community bucket, and you can also play in the culture bucket. And these are all kind of important. Wouldn't you agree, Denise?
Yeah.
All right, so now let's see if there's any more questions. Yeah, by the way, guys.
And I think I'd also agree. It's funny you say, like, I really resonate with that, Kendall, of I probably wouldn't have thought that 2 years ago either, if somebody told me that even maybe a year ago, that I'd be running an educational crypto company. And Nick, it's interesting, the first Twitter space Julianne and I ever did was with you, and that seems like forever ago. So hopefully I've gone a little better.
Well, we gotta do it again then.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, this is fun. Cool. Yeah, so guys, bring on your questions, because there is a prize for the best question today. All right, so question is, how to go about applying for Web3 jobs if we don't have any work experience, but we have knowledge of Web3 and smart contracts? I'm asking because I have a feeling that hiring in Web3 is quite different from hiring in Web2. Really good question. Denise, I'll let you take a stab at that. It's a kind of technical oriented one, but and then I can also chime in a bit.
I'm reading the question again now. How to go about it? We don't have experience, but we have knowledge of Web3 and smart contracts. I have a feeling it's quite different from hiring Web2. So I actually think that if you have knowledge of Web3 and knowledge of smart contracts, you're already in a really good position. And there's no industry standard, right? It's such a new industry, and you have to just apply. And at whatever company or organization or DAO you end up getting hired at, people will teach you the ropes, because I think all of these crypto organizations are really doing things their own way. So just getting yourself to a place where you're prepared enough to understand the Web3 basics, you already understand smart contracts, you're in a good place. So
Yeah,
the next step there is just applying.
Yep, I would echo that. I would add a couple more dimensions to that. What I would say is that, it's not just about experience, it's also about reputation. So if you have experience, you probably have a GitHub and you've done projects, etc. I think more than Web2, which has ridiculous, like made up tests and things like that, and made up whiteboard interviews and all that. In Web3, you're going to find that people are more likely to look at what's your reputation and how engaged have you been in this community. And that is the basis of which decisions are typically made, more so than having any ridiculous kind of, interview process and all that kind of stuff. Just because there is no, like, most of the people that will be hiring have themselves been in the role maybe for a couple of months or whatever. Like, we're talking about a very young kind of ecosystem. And so we don't have a lot of history and things like that. So it's more built upon, hey, you're cool. I've seen you in the Discord. You've asked some good questions in the spaces, etc. And oh, look at that. It turns out that you've been doing development and your GitHub looks great. You're on board. That's it, So it's as simple as that. And it does sound pretty simple, but it comes down to that. All right, I see another question. What do you imagine we as Web3 enthusiasts need to do in order for Web3 to gain mass adoption and mainstream? Are there any cool projects you see in the space doing something to bridge this gap? Ooh, that's a great question. So yeah, so I think that just by being a Web3 enthusiast and participating in these communities, you're already moving the needle, because by participating in numbers organically, what's happening is that tools are being built. Content is being created, kind of like what Surge is doing, etc., to make crypto more accessible. I'll let Denise speak specifically on that topic.
Yeah, I think for us, bridging the gap is really what we have in mind. And a lot of people I speak to that aren't super deep into crypto find the language around it really intimidating. And so creating that, making things a lot more easily digestible and accessible is what seems to be having people stay on and not feel intimidated by what's going on around them. Sometimes when you jump into, Discords where people are, I think beginner inclusion is important. And I think a lot of these Discords and communities need to keep that in mind, because the more you learn, I think the easier you forget what it was like to enter the space in the first place. And so if you're already working in Web3 and you want to make it more accessible and you want to make it more mainstream, be careful with using terminology that other people might not understand, and use analogies. I always say to explain things to people and try to make things as digestible as possible.
Yeah, and in addition to sort of just content, etc., part of it is also about engagement and the experience, right? So you have organizations or protocols rather, like POAP, which is proof of attendance protocol. So that's a very gentle way in which people can get introduction to crypto. Like, they show up for some event or something like that and they have no idea, but at the end of it they say, hey, go through this process and you get an NFT that indicates you were there. And that gets people excited because, wow, now I have proof that I did this workshop or things like that. And by the way, if you've signed up for this particular session via the type form, you will get a POAP badge. So, that's just for showing up and listening here. Now you have this NFT that will, at some point, as we gamify things, will have some value. The other thing about making mainstream, making Web3 more accessible to mainstream is about hybrid apps. We don't talk about that too much, and I do want to talk about that a little bit. Everyone always assumes that it's a binary world, but there's Web2 app or there's a Web3 app. But I feel like most of the growth in the coming year and even future is going to come from apps that already exist, which add on a Web3 component to it. And I think games are going to lead in that because of the fact that they have large audiences that are always willing to experiment with cool stuff. So I think a bunch of games are going to start adding NFTs as a component in there and introduce mainstream users to NFTs, because the power of being able to take your game asset from game A to game B to game C doesn't exist right now. And to be able to do it is going to unlock so much potential. So I think, yeah. So if you are interested in that, you should look at any kind of sort of gaming based projects, because that's really a huge sort of unlock, I think, for this kind of stuff. So great question. In terms of cool projects, obviously, Surge is one. There's also Try Crypto. What other projects do you think of that are trying to make crypto more accessible? I'm trying to think of them.
Well, there's Rabbit Hole also, which is similar to what you described. You have Quest almost, correct? I actually haven't used it myself, but I know there's Quest to creating from an engineer side, I believe, and then also from a user side. And once you've completed this quest, the goal here would be that you learn, right? You leave this quest learning how to have interacted with a blockchain in some sort of way, and then you get an NFT in return for your participation. And I think Zapper is doing these as well. So there's a few companies out there doing stuff like this.
Yeah, one example, getting back to gaming that I want to talk about here is, especially during the pandemic in Philippines, Axie Infinity became the source of livelihood for a lot of people. So Axie Infinity is a play to earn essential game, and what a lot of people in the Philippines learned that with just their phones, they could play this game all day long, and in the process, essentially earn these characters. And those characters were valuable to other people, but mostly in the Western Hemisphere, who wanted to not spend that much time. They just wanted to play the game, and that became a source of livelihood for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And it's an amazing story,
And a lot of them making a lot more money than they did in their home countries. So it was awesome that they were able to do it through a blockchain tech.
Exactly. Yeah. So play to earn is an interesting business model. Lots of people emulating that now, and I see new business ideas around that all the time. And actually, it's not just play to earn; it's X to earn, because attention is a scarce commodity, and so people's attention matters. And so now there's models coming up where you do X. It's even like learn to earn. There's all kinds of X to earn type of models that are coming up, and you might consider that also a gig. Why not? Like, just by engaging or working in communities, playing games, etc. If you can earn money, that's a legit way to move things forward. All right. Are there any other questions? All right. Why don't we talk a little bit about DAOs right now? And so first of all, why don't you, if you don't mind, Denise, like, just to set the baseline here, tell people what a DAO is.
Interesting. We actually just posted a Twitter thread today on it because we published an article, DAO for a beginner's guide to DAO. So I will actually make sure to link that in here later. But a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and we're seeing groups of people form together with a shared mission or a shared product or a fund. A lot of these DAOs are being built to collectively invest in NFTs, or there's really DAOs popping up for everything. There's a really cool DAO called Cabin DAO. I'm sure you've heard of it, Nick, where they literally have built a cabin that people go and use. And I believe they're building more cabins now. So it's unlike a typical company where where the company holds the control of the company. DAOs are just, you can look at it as a company that everybody owns a piece of. So from the top, there's hierarchies within them, but from the top to the bottom, everybody has a piece, and the tokens within a DAO give you voting rights. So it's a really cool new concept. And I think DAOs are popping up every day and really revolutionizing the way that we're used to thinking of companies and organizations.
Yeah, at the last BlockChai and Chill session, I had my co-founder Chase Chapman come here, and we talked extensively about DAO. So if you want to learn more, you can go look at that. But what I want to do today, Denise, is like dive a little bit into what are some new kinds of jobs that are coming up because of DAO. So we've talked about all these other non-technical roles like marketing, social media, UX, community manager, etc. But to your knowledge, like what are some of the DAO specific roles that are, that you're seeing that don't exist in Web 2?
Well, there's treasury management of DAOs. That's a bit, I guess that does exist, but I'm trying to think of like roles that don't. Well, one, it would be the person that's setting up the token structure, right? Which is a completely new structure that we haven't seen in Web 2. And then from there, I mean, certain DAOs have like NFT specialists. Certain DAOs have people from the DAO representing them on DeFi protocols. I feel like you'll have more input though. I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, I think you hinted on quite a few interesting ones. What I like to think of is to step back a little bit and look at the process of how DAOs are managed. The governance of DAOs goes through essentially a cycle where someone has an idea and they make a proposal. And then people vote on that proposal. And then that proposal is approved, and now it has to be executed on. It has to be funded. It has to be reported on. It has to be tracked. And then that project ends, and then that begins again. But in that life cycle, think about all the different roles that are involved. For example, when proposals are created, someone needs to vet them. So maybe your job is to like review these proposals and even like do a first level of should this even go, like, or are the standards met for what a proposal is. Then in terms of voting, there's going to be conflicts. Maybe there's a tied vote or whatever. Who's a jurist who will sort of decide on what happens? Maybe the DAO charter or never defined exactly what happens when there's a tie or where there's a disagreement or anything like that. So you need people with those skills. Typically in DAOs, you don't have one person who controls the keys to the kingdom, if you will, like in terms of the private keys. You have multi-sig wallets, etc. So administering those wallets, making sure, and you wouldn't just have one multi-sig wallet in a DAO. You might have lots of different committees or councils or tribes or guilds or whatever the DAO decides. So there's all that security to be administered. And so there's all these very, very specific roles. So on the one hand, there are the generalists who work with, the types of things we talked about, product, marketing, but then there are these deep, very DAO specific roles that are a green field of opportunity for you. So if you're like trying to figure out what should I do, latch into one kind of thing, one kind of role that you're seeing in DAOs and just double down on it, become the expert on it, because you can then take that knowledge and be the same, have the same role in multiple different DAOs, and that becomes sort of your thing. You can develop great expertise. So that's what I would recommend is look at some of these governance type roles, which are just coming up. And the larger the DAO, the more of these resources you need. So, all right, let's wrap it up here today with some closing remarks. So Denise, based upon the job board and the organization you've created, I'm gonna guess that you're pretty optimistic about careers in Web3. So why don't you kind of tell the audience here about what their next step should be if they want to get going? What is their immediate action they should take?
So I think we touched we touched on this earlier, and I think education is number one, right? So looking into these initiatives like crypto culture and society or hype partners, if you're interested in marketing and making the transition from Web2 to Web3, then considering applying for something like the Hype Academy, right? And like you said earlier, deciding what your niche is and doubling down on it and going deep into the education, joining the discords and the communities that you think will be helpful to get to that point. And then checking out job boards and applying. And I think the more you apply and the more you talk to these companies and organizations, you'll know what they're looking for. And a good start would be to just find DAOs that interest you and see if you can apply to do bounties.
Cool. Kendall, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think I just want to say that, you know, as someone who didn't even know what Web3 was last year, and like I have the opportunity now to be in this space, that if you're looking to make that leap, just, I mean, I would say just go for it, you know, educate yourself, join communities, you know, like make a Twitter, like have a voice, you know, like start immersing yourself in the content in these communities. And I don't know, I'm, as someone that didn't know much about it, you know, and I have a space now in Web3, I think that you can too. So I would say to just go for it.
Awesome, thank you. So one of the things we're going to do after this is we're going to review the notes and the chat and figure out if any of these questions rise to the level where we, like all of us agree that, yep, that's the winner, we'll do that. And you might find yourself as the proud owner of a Fame Lady Squad NFT. Yep. So we'll do that and get back to you. Thanks everyone for attending this episode. Thank you, Denise, and we'll catch you again next week. See ya. Bye bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.